5:06 PM, Finance and Property Committee, on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. Matt Zacher, I am the chairman. Please go around and introduce yourselves.
Jay Bemke, committee member.
Sue Schill, City Attorney.
Shane Blazer, mayor.
Tim DeSorsi, Finance.
Paul Vollert, Public Works Superintendent.
Jennifer Gossick, City Clerk.
Dean Veneman, Secretary.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, initial review of alcohol license renewals. Are there any questions? Okay, at this time, we're tabling it until next month's meeting. Moving on to item number 3, consider a request for Gordy's Pub and Grill LLC, doing business as Gordy's Pub and Grill, Adam P. Hoffer, agent for retail Class B fermented malted beverages and Class B intoxicating liquor licenses for the premises located at 2962 State Highway 73 South. Are there any questions? Any comments?
So this is the sale of another bar, of an existing bar. Layla's is selling to Gordy's. It is good to go, yep. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
I have a motion on the table and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, put it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. So moved. Number 4, consider a request from GPW LLC, doing business as Work, Alan G. Warzella, agent for retail Class B fermented malt beverages and Class B intoxicating liquor licenses for the premises located at 212 West Grand Avenue.
this
Jennifer?
application is also good to go. This is a sale from door 212 to Work. So it's another sale of a property or a business.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Dean, second by Jay. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I put it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 5, consider a request from Wisconsin Rapids Ranger Baseball, Inc., doing business as Wisconsin Rapids Ranger Baseball, Christina L. Suring, agent for a 6-month retail Class B fermented malt beverages license for the premises located at 1801 16th Street South. Any questions or comments? Jennifer?
No, that's fine. No, I was just saying I wasn't taking minutes, and I remembered I'm supposed to. Okay. This is, I guess I can speak to this. This is the new quadplex in the for the school district off of 16th Street, and we have everything, all the paperwork. We're just working through a few logistic things regarding the actual footprint of where the licensed premises would be, and just a few other things regarding storage of liquor and such. But the Rangers, or the Wisconsin Rapids Rangers, which is the Legion team, will be obtaining a license for that complex, and will be providing alcohol at their games, and then also for the Red Hawks, which is a new baseball team that'll be playing at the quadplex. So I would recommend approval of this, and we'll get the final details in time for the council meeting. But everything is good to go. We're just working on a few minor details.
Any other questions or comments? Is there anybody from the public that wants to speak at this time? No? Okay, thank you.
I'll move to approve then.
Second.
Motion by Jay, seconded by Dean. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 6, consider for approval the appointment of Christine Engelhardt as successor agent for the retail Class A fermented malt beverages and Class A intoxicating liquor licenses for Dolgan Corp. LLC, doing business as Dollar General Store number 21068 for the premises located at 820 A Street South. Questions or comments? Jennifer?
This is just a change in agent. This and the one after it are both for Dollar General, just the two different stores, same agent.
Any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I put this to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 7, consider for approval the appointment of Christine Engelhardt as successor agent for the retail Class A fermented malt beverages and Class A intoxicating liquor licenses for Dolgan Corp. LLC, doing business as Dollar General Store number 10309 for premises located at 951 West Grand Avenue.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Put it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 8, consider for approval a temporary retail Class B fermented malt beverages license for Central Wisconsin Cultural Center at 2651 A Street South for a live music on the patio event to be held on Friday, May 20th, 2022, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, I put this to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 9, consider for approval a temporary retail class fermented malt beverages license for Central Wisconsin Cultural Center at 2651 A Street South for an open mic event to be held on Friday, May 27th, 2022, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. So moved. Number 10, consider for approval a temporary retail Class B fermented malt beverages license for Central Wisconsin Cultural Center at 2651 A Street South for an open mic event to be held Friday, June 24th, 2022, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Questions or comments? I entertain a motion.
So moved.
I entertain a second.
Second.
Questions or comments? Put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 11, consider a special event application from Central Wisconsin BMX Club, Inc., including requests for closure of the East Side Compost Site on Saturday, July 30th, 2022, and use of compost site property for excess parking during the event for a Badger State 3-day national event to be held on Friday, July 29th through Sunday, July 31st, 2022, at the BMX facility located at 2220 East Riverview Expressway. Questions or comments?
I have two questions, or one question.
Jay?
So Jennifer, this has been done in the past, and for Paul, no issues?
So this has been done in the past. Sue, did you want to address that?
It has been done in the past, and I think there was some concern, this would have been the third time, I think, so generally it could have been something that the clerk approved, but because of the closing of the compost site, I think staff felt that it should come to you to decide whether that's appropriate or not, and then I would suggest if for future events, that if it's okay to, if they would host this event again, that if you would approve now that they could do this again, obviously pending street department approval, that then they would not need to come back each time, if you're okay with closing the compost site, just as part of the special events application going forward. But I think that was the only concern that we had, and Paul can talk to that.
Yeah, so we've had this, not necessarily this one, but there's been multiple national events, probably 3 to 4 in the last 8-9 years. The biggest thing, like Sue said, is it's closing the compost site for that Saturday. They use the gate coming into the compost site as their entrance to their tournament, I guess I would call that. And then they use their normal gate as the exit for it. So there's, one-way travel in, one-way travel out. We advertise a week ahead of time that the compost site is going to be closed through signage at the site itself. There is still some people that try to come into the compost site, and they have people at the gate, taking payment for parking and stuff like that. So the BMX club is the one that deals with the people that are necessarily not happy about being able to use the compost site, having to come to the west side, but they deal with it because they need the additional parking space. So the compost site would close at the end of the day on Wednesday, and then we would clean everything up Thursday morning for them to be able to use it in the afternoon. So it's not any additional hardship or anything like that. I don't think this is going to be, they had a national tournament, I think 2 or 3 years ago. That was a pretty big deal. And this is going to be smaller than that. So I don't see any issues with being able to accommodate it.
Is there a, go ahead, go.
I know one thing from a zoning standpoint that we're looking at as well is outdoor entertainment. So the use, while it's on city property, still has to be classified within the zoning code. That's how I've classified it. And outdoor entertainment in the B2 district requires a conditional use permit. So I am doing a little more digging, and probably will continue to talk to staff to see what approval, if any, happened previously, or if it may have been kind of grandfathered in prior and would not necessarily have to come back for a conditional use permit. But it's potentially something that could happen in the next month with regards to the use in the zoning district. And a conditional use would go to Plan Commission and then Common Council for final action.
Is it possible that there would be a reason for it not to happen according to the code, or that they couldn't use it?
No, I don't think so. I think, conditional uses exist in unique circumstances where they could be detrimental to the surrounding properties. I think in this case, there aren't really residential homes directly adjacent. It's surrounded by school property and right-of-way. So I don't think that it could, be a concern. Nonetheless, I think, it's required as part of the zoning code.
Okay, thank you. Just a thought, Facebook, to be able to put a post out a couple weeks ahead or something to try to get as many people to know so they go straight for the west side, maybe? I don't know if there's any other ways to get it out to them. Any other questions?
West Side keeps the same hours then, anyway?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Move to approve then.
Can,
Oh, go ahead.
well, and or could you amend that with the authority of give the clerk the authority in the future?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Motion to approve, and then with the amendment of having the clerk to give the authority to do this in the future, so I don't have to bring it back before council.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. So moved. Number 12, consider Phase 2 of the wayfinding sign project with graphic house for fabrication and install. Kyle.
Thank you, Chairman. So I do have some updated bids in the staff memo that was provided as part of this item. I noted that Graphic House would be providing those bids. I can hand them out.
Okay.
So in summary, this item, again, is Phase 2 of the wayfinding sign project. The design occurred at the beginning of 2019 and was wrapped up by early 2021. We then released an RFP last year and selected Graphic House to do Phase 1. Graphic House is near completion of Phase 1. I think they should have it completed this Thursday. And so then that begs the question as to whether or not we want to pursue Phase 2. The reason we kind of split this up into two phases is primarily due to the cost. It's a substantial cost. I think Phase 1 was about $82,000. The design prior was about $75,000. And as you can see from the updated bids, Phase 2 can range from about $45,000 to $68,000. Phase 1 was funded through the ED Room Tax Fund. And it's my understanding that we've got available funds in our forecasted funds for 2022 to cover the costs of Phase 2. And again, you have two bids in front of you because one includes the entirety of Phase 2 as it was recommended by the consultant in the design. And then the second bid is a lesser amount of about $44,000, which has 3 signs removed. I think there are 3 signs that are somewhat repetitive, that are unnecessary, and so I requested those to be removed and the bid to be updated. So I think tonight, at a minimum, I think we'd be looking for some feedback on Phase 2, primarily as it relates to the second bid, the lower amount. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions or concerns.
Yeah.
Jay, you have the floor.
Kyle, so phase 1 is complete, correct? And but those signs have not been installed yet, is that correct?
That is not correct. The signs have been installed. You'll see them on the screen shortly. So a majority of Phase 1, right, has been installed. Phase 2 has not been installed.
But there is work left to do on Phase 1, correct?
Correct.
But that's been paid for?
So a majority has been paid for, yes. There might be a small additional amount to correct an issue on one side. One sign downtown, McMillan was misspelled, so the contractor on Thursday will be coming back out and putting the proper vinyl up. So there might be a couple $100 charge there. And then the streets department we're working with to concrete some of the locations. So you can see in the photos attached. One is at Ben Hansen to the left, and the other one is downtown on Grand Avenue. And those areas are going to be concreted by the street department.
Okay, and then just one more thing is, You were talking about how you were gonna pay for phase two, and I see as we're going to discuss a little bit later some of this, you have a request in, or that was one of the requests for the ARPA money? Correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think initially, though, it was in the budget placed as a capital request, using the ED room tax dollars, the same way Phase 1 was funded.
Mayor Blazer?
Thank you. So Kyle, and I've already talked to Kyle about this, but, you know, in the priority of projects, do you feel phase two warrants the spending of almost $50,000, or do we have other maybe higher priority projects that we'd rather use those funds for? And do we get enough, do you see enough value in completing phase two versus some of the priorities of other projects out there?
I think we're in a unique position in that there's some gaps in the wayfinding signage. So Phase 1 was the bulk of the trailhead kiosks, excuse me, and the pedestrian kiosks. And so Phase 2 is more of the on-street signs, the cheaper signs, if you will, except for a couple of park signs. So there are 3 recommended park signs to the tune of $8,000, which I think could be questionable as well. So even in the second bid, that's about $44,000. If you remove a couple of those park signs, you know, that would substantially drop it down also to about $30,000 or even less. So I think, you know, I generally would support at a minimum that lower, you know, approximately $25,000 to $30,000 amount just to, you know, finalize those gaps. And then, as you posed that question earlier, Mayor, it led me to kind of take a closer look at what are kind of the minimum amount of signs that are necessary, that I feel are necessary to complete the project. And I think in doing so, it's the, you know, the main signs minus the park signs. And I talked to Jake Klingforth as well about whether or not he thought it was pertinent to pursue those park signs. And he has a recommendation to actually, if they're pursued and made part of the wayfinding project as recommended by the designer, that we look at possibly doing other parks and not the ones that are referenced. So, you know, I think in being conscious of the dollar amounts, I think you could probably do a park sign for a lot less than $8,000. And, you know, I think if the committee were to want to remove those park signs as well, I would generally support that, which would significantly lower the total amount. But there are also other projects I think that the ED room tax dollars could be used for that may be better than Phase 2.
Any other questions?
You want to elaborate on what those other projects are?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the ARPA allocation. So all department heads put together a list of potential projects that they felt as though those ARPA dollars could be utilized from. And I think, you know, dependent upon if any of those, you know, community development projects are selected for ARPA funding, would determine as to whether or not maybe the ED funding could be a secondary source if ARPA dollars are not available for those projects. I think there are a few that TIF could fund as well. And so I think thinking about those projects, you know, I would prioritize a few of them over this, and I don't have the list I submitted for the ARPA dollars, but, you know, Phase 2 I think would be lower. Phase 2 of signage would be lower on that list. I do also have the concern, however, that with the contractor already on board, they've done a good job, that if we postpone action on this or wait a year or two, I have a fear that it may never happen then. Or if we have to put it back out for bid, we'll be paying a higher cost from a different sign contractor who has to redo the shop drawings and so forth. So I think we have an opportunity at a minimum, to fund approximately $25,000 to $30,000 worth to fill the gaps in, maybe forego the park signs, forego the other 3 that I've requested to be omitted in the updated bid. Still have some fund within the economic development room tax account to maybe fund other projects moving forward. But again, meet the need to kind of complete the wayfinding sign project. So to me, that's kind of the hybrid approach. And if I've confused you, I apologize.
Could we move this to make it item, or combine it with item 17 when we discuss the ARPA projects?
I don't know how in-depth that, I have a question for Tim.
No?
Jay?
Tim, do you know off the top of your head how much is in that room tax fund?
Sure. If you remember, last month we adopted the carryover resolution, so we carried over 59,000 unspent funds in the room tax dedicated for economic development. Of that amount, the complete phase 1, we had expenditures to date of 18,964. So, and then also in the 2022 budget, it's estimated that we'll get 33,000 from room tax this year, and I would say that's based on how room tax has recovered from the COVID period. That's a very conservative estimate, so there would be sufficient funds in the room tax to cover phase 2.
Thank you.
So at this time, are we being asked to vote on to continue it or how to fund it? Or both?
So I've made a request to use the ED room tax dollars, and I think the second bid of $44,000 includes the park signs. But if you did not want to fund the park signs as part of it, you could make a request or move to subtract the park signs from the smaller bid that Graphic House submitted. And if you don't feel like you want to fund the project at all, obviously you don't have to act on it. Or if you feel like ARPA dollars is a better use for phase 2, that can be, I guess, discussed as well.
Does the committee have further questions?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess probably I would caution that the use of ARPA funds probably wouldn't be fair at this point, because I think the point of this exercise was to put all the projects next to each other. Because, yeah, it might be a good idea to use ARPA funds, but how is that fairly being compared to any other project? So I think the project should be looked together and prioritized based on that, than pulling out one project out of there, considering if that project has merit, which it does, but how is that fair to any of the other projects? I guess I'm just asking that maybe you don't look at assigning ARPA funds to this project at this point, and wait for, if that's something you want to do, wait to have that discussion when you're looking at all the projects on the list.
I have a question now.
Jay?
So we don't necessarily, we could do this, we could pass this tonight with the room tax money assigned to it, and as we go through these other projects with the ARPA money, we can change it later, correct?
Well, and I guess, and Tim could probably speak to that, if you want to assign the room tax money to it as the funding source, I guess that's up to you and that's fine. I'm just asking, when you look at the ARPA projects, look at them all as one group of projects. So they're all fairly assessed next to each other. But if you want to spend room tax dollars, my only question to Kyle was, is that the best choice to use those funds for? Is that the highest priority you'd rather use those funds for? And if so, then I support it. But if you want to spend room tax dollars, my only question to Kyle was, is that the best choice to use those funds for? Is that the highest priority you'd rather use to use those funds for? And if so, then I support it. But if not, then is the project worth doing? That's the question.
Dean, anything?
No, I'm not.
Tim?
I think when we get into discussion about 16 and 17, the capital improvements plan, the ARPA money, that kind of is what the mayor's alluding to. It is like, I think as an organization, sometimes that we've struggled with putting all our priorities on one page. It's easy to look at something in a vacuum and saying that's a good idea. They're all good ideas. But when you compare them, side by side, then it gives a little bit of clarity. And I think that's why I put number 16 on there as far as, really making, as an organization, making a conceded effort towards developing a comprehensive capital improvements plan. And I think the ARPA money is going to kind of play into that also. So, and this is kind of a prime example. It's just like, this is a worthy project, but as the mayor alluded to, is like, but when you compare it to something else or, in that economic development range, is it the priority, number one priority for economic development? And that's something that I think as an organization, we need to start, kind of vetting those things and really looking at this so that when we make these decisions, we're saying, okay, yeah, here's what it is. Here's what our priorities are. Granted, maybe some of the priorities won't make the list to be funded, but they're considered in, along with all the other ones. So,
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? What are the committee's wishes?
Yeah, I'm.
We're
I'm
not
excited.
going to make a motion on it.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to make a motion on this.
So if we're not going to make a motion, do we table it? Do we drop it?
Are you deferring a decision? Are you denying phase 2 and dropping it completely? Are you, however, I guess, whatever you want to do will dictate what your motion would be, so.
Shane?
Yeah, I didn't mean to throw a wrench in it, but because all I'm asking is if Kyle feels that this project's important enough to spend that ED money on, because that money is allocated for use in economic development to use for what he feels is economic development. My question was, is this the most important use at this time? And if he feels that it is, I fully support it. To do it just to do it, maybe not, but if Kyle feels that this is a worthy project, I'm just questioning is, and I don't know of anything else that might be more worthy of it that he has ideas for. But I just want to be sure that, if we're going to spend, it might be 30,000 now, if that's the best use of that 30,000 or if there's more higher, better uses for it. That was my only question, but I didn't mean to put a wrench in it though.
I'll make a motion to approve this up to $30,000, which would eliminate the 3 park signs.
I can second that.
I have a motion by Jay, second by Dean. Any further comments or questions? Kyle?
I just want to note, so I've got a spreadsheet open here with everything open, and in doing so, removing the park signs and the ones that I mentioned that didn't seem necessary, the total comes out to about $27,969. So I think if you've got an additional $2,000 as a contingency, that would be appropriate to make it 30,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Move to take a vote on it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 13, consider for approval an agreement with Advanced Disposal Services Cranberry Creek Landfill LLC for solid waste disposal services.
Okay, thank you. So what this is, apologize, miscommunication that we didn't get you the contract. But our contract expired with Waste, or Advanced Cranberry Creek, it expired in 2020. At the time we started to redo the contract, they were being bought out by Waste Management, and so that was the delay. Really, all that is changing in the contract from previous years. There used to be exchange of our street sweepings for materials from the pit. That has been removed. There was another item there where city residents could go and show their residency and have tipping fees at the same as what we were paying. That's not required anymore because we're pretty much paying what the market is. So, you know, if I had a trailer full of garbage and I wanted to go out to the landfill as a city resident, I'm already paying what the city's paying to get rid of the garbage anyways. So that was removed from it. And then that was really it. There was some language, and Sue can maybe comment on this, in regards to what they had to report to us based off of their, how much space was available left in the landfill and everything like that. But that is required by, that they have to do that anyway, so the language that was in there was really kind of a duplicate, if I understood it correctly. And so, like I say, that's really what it is. This would be a 5-year contract again, and they have to show us reasoning for market increases and stuff like that, as far as our year-to-year tipping fees and stuff like that.
Jake?
Do you know how much, how much did the tipping fees go up, you know, off the top of your head?
So they went up, I believe it's like $10 a ton, but there was some fees that we were paying in the past that are no longer part of that they were, that they've been removed. So, I believe everything said and done, we're probably like $5 a ton more. But again, we were working on this last year, and so we've been going on a month-to-month basis, and our current monthly rates are less than what's specified in this contract, so I'm going to circle back on it before the mayor would sign this to make sure that the rates are correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Sue?
We currently are in part of the negotiating committee. The mayor's on the landfill expansion committee for waste management because they are wishing to expand. And this is certainly something that we could attempt to negotiate in terms of getting either free solid waste disposal or reduced solid waste disposal. So I wouldn't close the door completely on, you know, perhaps negotiating something better through that expansion process. But at this time, since we hadn't had agreement for a period of time, we thought we would go ahead and do this. And certainly if something changes in terms of negotiating with them that we could get a better deal, we'll certainly do that.
If you have been going month to month, do we have to sign a 5-year contract, or can we wait?
You know, I'm not sure whether they, I think they want a longer term, and I think honestly, to protect us, we probably would want something, otherwise they could, change it every month or jack it up in 3 months, or, I think just in looking at other contracts, I think it's reasonable, and I think, and like I said, I think we through the negotiating process of the expansion, there might, be some reason for some leverage there in terms of negotiating that. So, I guess I would recommend proceeding with it. I think it's a reasonable amount, and to lock them in at this point, I think would be fair. I don't know if Paul has any comments on that.
No, I don't, I'm sorry.
And the expansion is happening when again?
Well, it'll probably be a couple of years before it actually happens, but we just started, they had to give notice that they were expanding, and then there's quite a long process through the DNR and feasibility, and so we would, I think it's in a couple of years away at least, isn't it, Shane? So it'll be when they actually do it, but the negotiating is starting, is just going to be starting. The committee has been meeting, not with Waste Management, but I'm anticipating probably in the next few months they'll start meeting with them, and then we'll see where we go from there. But the expansion itself isn't going to probably be complete for a couple of years.
And the contract we're talking about is a 5-year contract, so we would have some time after the expansion on our contract before we can renegotiate.
Absolutely, right, yes.
Do you have any other input, Mr. Mayor?
No, Sue covered it well. They're still using their existing cell, and so what they're prepping for is that next cell, and that is a few years off.
In my understanding, Paul, as you said, that we used to get below market value, and now we're at market value?
No, it was in the contract before that as a resident, we would be able to go out there and dump garbage at the same rate that the city was as a municipality. And realistically, that was, we weren't getting anything as a better deal than what any other hauler was getting or anything like that. So it was really, the last contract was written while I was a supervisor versus in this role, and I believe it was probably something that was maybe just carried forward from previous contracts or whatever. So the logistics of it, number one, someone that lives in the town of Grand Rapids, it says the city of Wisconsin Rapids on their driver's license, so they didn't have, the landfill didn't have anything to say, well, yeah, this is a Wisconsin Rapids resident versus, a town resident or whatever. So that was part of the reason why they requested that it go away, because it was going to be hard for them to manage whether or not, but there wasn't a reduced rate for dumping for us. So why would a city resident get it? So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with Advanced Disposal.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 14, consider for approval an agreement with Spielbauer Fireworks Company, Inc., display operator Sky Painter Fireworks LLC for the city's 2022 4th of July fireworks display. Sue.
So we had a vendor that we were using, I would say the last, I don't even know, 7, 8 years, maybe, out of Minnesota. And that company was sold last spring, I think. But they still did our display last July. But now they've had some more. They're now, the owner of the new company passed away. Anyways, they spun off the Minnesota company that we were dealing with, and they have not been very responsive to us, and we've just felt that we needed to go another direction this year, especially since it's coming up on May. So we are recommending to go with a local display operator at Sky Painters LLC. They've done a lot of work in the area, and we've done a lot of permitting for them for their events with the rafters. I think they do BMX also. We're familiar with them because we went way back when we moved away from having our own, well, it wasn't our own employees, it was a certain group that they're shooting fireworks that we probably were too large, shouldn't have been shot that large. So when we started to get a handle on what really was going on there with our fireworks, we went through a lot of training, and Sky Painters was kind of part of that, so they definitely know what they're doing. Spielbauer is the larger fireworks company that actually we would contract with, that would provide the product. So we're very comfortable with them, especially with this shortened time frame of having to find someone, and so we would recommend to go with them. The display is the same cost as last year. Actually, it might be down $1,000 or $2,000. I want to say maybe last year was $21,000, but it would be $20,000. The fire department, the police department, I think Paul from the street department, everyone is comfortable going forward with them for this year, and then we would do an RFP for future years because we haven't done that for some time. So.
Any other questions or comments? What are your wishes?
Move to approve. I'm happy to do a little local carrier.
I'll second. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. So moved. Number 15, review and update grant management policy. Tim?
Sure. In your packet, you'll see the grant management policy that we originally adopted back in 2016. I'm just updating it for some things that have changed. One of the big items is that obviously we're subject to any single audit if we get $750,000 or more in federal funds. So, and then, according to the feds, they have guidelines of which you must follow when expending those grant funds, and this policy kind of lays that out. The one big change is that any time that we use federal funds, we must check, make sure that any contractor or vendor that we're dealing with has not been suspended or debarred by the federal government. So it's just going out on SAM-Gov, verifying that they're not on that list, documenting the grant file, and so that was the big change in here. Also, another change is that prior to submittal of any grant drawdowns, that we need at least 2 people to sign off that the grant drawdown is appropriate. And so I just added that to the policy to make sure that departments are following this, and also that departments, before they do a grant drawdown, that they're connecting with the finance department so that we're involved in that, because obviously when it comes to a single audit, the finance department's the one that gets audited on this, and so this just lays out that before any it doesn't matter what the dollar amount is. If it's federal funds, you must follow this grant policy. And so it's just updating for these changes, but also a reminder that assuming this gets adopted, that I will send this out to all the department heads saying you must follow this. And it's like with anything else, if in doubt, get a hold of us in the finance department so that we can get out ahead of this. So when it comes to if we have a single audit, we already know we have the grant file set up, everything good to go. So obviously you can see the changes in red. Not a lot of changes, but just wanted to kind of add those changes and reaffirm that this is our policy, and I'll be, upon adoption, sending out as a reminder to department heads that they need to follow this policy.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? What are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the new grant management policy.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. So moved. Number 16, discussion regarding creating a comprehensive capital improvement program. Tim?
Sure, I put this on this, and we kind of alluded it in our earlier discussion, is that, I think as an organization, this is one thing that we've kind of struggled with, is getting all our capital, priorities in a document, that they're all compared together. And, as an organization, as a community, we can go through and vet these and kind of prioritize. Also, it also sets up to what we have down the road. So when you have things like ARPA money, utilizing city reserves, that you can strategically start to utilize these to fund some of your priorities. And so I just think that, I discussed with the mayor that, the reason why I put this on there is just kind of get the council's endorsement. Obviously, internally, we're going to kind of put together a game plan on how we're going to accomplish this and bring that back to the committee. But it was just more of just kind of putting the council, on notice that, I think this is a concerted effort that I think staff needs to do. It's not a, it's something that I can't do alone. It's something the mayor can't do alone. It's going to involve all internal staff and kind of putting together a committee and a process so that we have a formal process that each year we're reviewing our 5-year projections and capital program, capital needs and things like that. And obviously, it's hard to sit there and say in 5 years I'm going to need this, but you're constantly updating that. And by having that structured program, it forces us to look at each year that we're doing it. And, in my vision is that something that, adopting this plan on an annual basis occurs in April, May, then it feeds right into the next budget cycle, so that we're always updating and reprioritizing what our needs are as an organization, as a community. And so it's just kind of more of a, nothing concrete tonight, but just putting the council on notice that this is kind of internally what we're going to put together, and, we'll kind of create a program and bring it back for your approval as far as the process. And then it's really up to staff to do the heavy lifting and get this done.
Mayor Blazer?
Yeah, and I agree. And that's the whole point. So we're not looking at these projects one at a time and evaluating them. Just they're put against all the other projects and all the important priorities. But it lends to that, one department's priority may not be the city's priority. And that's where council can take that review and look at these projects every year, and it can be readjusted, as priorities change. But they're all looked together, all next to each other, whether it be, anything that you see in the capital outlays. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll just throw my 2 cents in here. I think that it's a great idea in terms of getting our ducks in a row. I think I've heard a lot of people refer to, tying future city councils' hands, stuff like that. I think this is more about giving the councils in the city a foundation to know this is where we're at. This is what we've been striving for, and to have that plan and knowing where funds are, we're trying to raise the funds to do the next project, hold on to money and this and that. I think it's a great idea, and I think it will take some work, but once it's all said and done, we'll say, I wish we would have done that a long time ago. So I appreciate it. So at this point, no more comments or questions? We're not looking for a motion of any sort? Okay.
Nope.
So, yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Number 17, review American Rescue Plan Act grant fund requests.
Okay, I think, as you recall, a couple of months ago, we sent out, the mayor's office sent out an email to alderpersons and department heads requesting, we have about approximately $1.2 million of ARPA funds that, based on now that we have a $10 million revenue loss exclusion, can be used for any basically public purpose, which is one of the reasons why we kind of held off of allocating these funds. Because if you remember, when the initial allocation was given, it was like water, sewer, broadband. And, and it was kind of like I remember getting the CARES Act money a year prior, and how the U.S. Treasury kept changing the guidance. So I'm like, and just knowing that we had until the end of 2024 to expend the funds, I was just kind of like, well, let's just wait and see how the guidance comes out. Well, lo and behold, it's like, the Treasury changed their guidance, and they basically said that they're just going to assume that every municipality or anyone that recipient of the grant funds lost $10 million in revenue due to the COVID pandemic. And our allocation was 1.8 at that thing. So now we're able to use that exclusion and basically saying if you lost revenue, you can use it for any public purpose. So that really opened up, the gates as far as what the city wants to utilize those funds. And so we sent out that communication to the alderpersons and department heads to seek back, some ideas of how we want to do that. And obviously, the mayor's office also sent out, all the requests that we got. Now it's kind of determining, okay, how are we going to go about prioritizing this and things like that. And I just kind of wanted to, I put this on the agenda, kind of start that discussion about how we want to go about, prioritizing these funds. If we want to do it in concert with, the budget process, or use it in concert with, the capital improvements program and some of the funding challenges that we might have in that are identified. Obviously there's no rush in allocating these funds because we have up until December 31st, 2024 to obligate the funds. And then we have up until 2026 to actually expend the funds. So obligation means that you enter into contract to spend the funds, but you have until 2026. So, there's not an immediate urgency, but I think it's something that we need to start discussing, as part of either the 2023 budget process, or even better, the capital improvements, program, as we start identifying some of those capital needs and how we want to do that. Or, obviously with the information that was submitted, if the council, the mayor, or, anyone feels like there's an immediate need that, feels like, okay, we need to use these funds, we can decide that. So it's kind of a discussion about how we want to go about now deciding how we're going to utilize those funds. And that's why I put it on the agenda. It's not necessary to select projects now, but how do we want to go about prioritizing and expending those funds for, the priorities that the council sees fit.
Anybody else? Mayor Blazer?
Yeah, I guess more to spin off of what Tim was saying is, do we want a certain criteria, or, yeah, I think we're struggling with how do we put these projects in a priority list? And so we're kind of reaching out to you to see what you think, maybe what type of exercise we can do to maybe prioritize this, because everybody that submitted their projects obviously is in favor of getting them done.
Right.
But are they truly a priority to the city?
And I'll just point out an example of, we heard about the infrastructure bill that was passed, at the federal level, and the state of Wisconsin received those funds, and they fed it into the STP urban grant program. Well, that still requires, even though more projects are going to be done through that, like Jackson Street is a STP urban, but the local municipality still has to come up with their 20%. We're not getting that funded with the infrastructure bill. The state's just saying we're doing more projects, that their 80% will be funded through that, but we still have to come up with 20% match. So it's kind of like, all right, how do we get all these kind of priorities, on the same page? And I think that kind of goes to like reason number 16 is like, we really need to get going and saying, okay, where are our priorities and where do we, because the big thing is, okay, you have 1.2 million. It's one-time money, right? So you're not going to use it for reoccurring type things. But you also want to make sure that it's used the most effective way possible. That we make an impact with those one-time dollars. And, and it's kind of going through that process. And right now we're trying to, with items 16 and 17, it's like, that's really what the exercise is going to be. It's like, okay, let's determine what our priorities are and where we can make an immediate impact with these dollars.
Jay?
So the list is pretty long. Would you consider getting staff together as a group and maybe, oh yeah. Screw it on the bottom. I wonder if you could get staff together and have them together go through and identify their priorities. I mean, there's just not, there's millions of dollars worth of projects on there, and
Right. I mean, I think we all have needs. Every department has needs. It's now, the difficult part is like, okay, how do you prioritize them and say, okay, this is the top priority? And I think, and that's why, I really, with item 16, the capital improvement program, I think that really is where that stuff kind of gets flushed out. It's like, okay, from a capital standpoint, because, ARPA money, it's like, you're not, it's hard to use ARPA money to fund reoccurring type expenditures, because once the funding goes away, you still have reoccurring expenditures. Okay, now where do you find the funding? So, the ARPA kind of feeds into that capital type needs and prioritizing that. And I think that's why, 16 and 17 are kind of intertwined to a bit. I'm not saying that there isn't things on this list that we can immediately do. I mean, if the council, as they reviewed it, said, hey, I think this is a priority, obviously we can fund those things. But it's really going through that exercise of like, okay, and really what this is, that list is kind of like almost a start at some of your capital improvement program. I mean, when you start a capital improvement program, one of the big things is you get a lot of stuff on the list.
Right.
The hard part is like, okay, how do we go and sort through that and prioritize? That's really the challenge of a capital improvements program. So that's why I kind of wanted to put this out there, and obviously we wanted to get, the feedback that we got to the council and saying these are the type of thing. But it's just something, we put it on the agenda to start thinking about, okay, how do we want to go about this? Obviously, there's not a huge immediate need that we have to expend these by the end of the year. We have 2 budget cycles in order to utilize these funds. So that's the good thing. We're afforded time to really think about how we want to deploy these funds to be the most effective impact for the city.
No, thank you. Anybody else?
I'd just like to see this list come back a little bit smaller.
So my thoughts on is what you're saying, the hard part is how to break it down into categories that are manageable. That's what Jay is saying. I believe also is you can have 1,000 things on a page, but you got to be able to break them down, otherwise they're all going to blur together. So the first thing we're talking about really when we talk about capital improvements is it infrastructure? Is it things that if we don't take care of them, we're going to end up regretting it monetarily in the near to mid-range future?
Right. When I talk about capital, it's just like it's one-time expenditure. I mean, and you can say that, well, they're not one time, but obviously it's not reoccurring. When I talk about reoccurring expenditures, I'm talking more operating. Like if you were to say fund positions with ARPA money, well, eventually the ARPA money is a finite amount of money. Once it's gone, now you have to find another funding source. And so everyone always says when you get grant money, make sure it's for one-time capital type needs. I'll just pull out an example is like, we know we're facing some issues at the Centralia Center with a new roof. It's a classic example of where, granted, I'm not saying it's a one-time expenditure because we put a new roof on. It's actually some point in the future you're going to need a new roof, but it's a long-term, 20-plus year expenditure. So if you'd use ARPA, say, for Centralia roof, it's like it's not coming back to you in your next budget cycle saying, okay, now you got to fill, the ARPA money's gone, now you got to fill the gap again.
Right.
So, and I think, part of this is that we can kind of weave number 16 and 17 together. It's like when we start internally trying to put together that capital improvements program and putting an internal team together, I think that'll feed into is using that same team to kind of start vetting some of the suggestions that were and how that, kind of goes in with our future capital needs.
Yeah. I think my recommendation would be to start out with whether it be, 4 to 7 categories of this is this. Like this is infrastructure, then this is, wish list, comes down towards that 5-7 thing where it's really not. It's just, boy, if I could have some money, this is what I would want to do. But there's so many things that we want to define as these have to happen. And those are the things that are, it's only going to help our budgetary process also to be able to say, these are have-tos, and you've said that a lot. There's money for these, but these are have-to things that have to be done. And we got to figure out if there's the wish list stuff that is pulling away. And granted, everybody wants the wish list. That's what makes us grow and progress into the future. But at the same time, we have to be able to afford what we have right now. And I think those are the things that are going to take the priority for this money that we're talking about. When it comes down to that group of people, are you looking for it in the first stages of it to more define those categories? Are you looking for aldermanic help with that, or are you looking to work internally?
I guess my thought is that it'd be an internal group that would kind of flush that out, and then we could bring you something more definite, and then work from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think for both of these items, it's like we're going to kind of put together like, you know, our game plan. And obviously the big thing is that we want to keep that, you know, that process transparent to the council. So we'll be giving updates like here we are and really looking for input also. You know, at some point the council is going to be involved in, you know, vetting some of those things. It's not like staff's going to say, here's what we want, approve it. It's like we also want impact. Feedback from the council and the community. So, you know, it's really, with both these items, it's really like the first step is really kind of laying out that structure, how we're going to go about it. And bringing that back to the council saying, okay, here's how it's going to work. And so that, okay, that the council is comfortable with how we're going to be kind of doing these things. And then obviously then going forward, the council is going to be intimately involved in both these items.
Okay.
Because ultimately, you're the ones that have to make the decision.
Right. So certainly make those decisions easier, though, so we appreciate it. Any other questions or comments?
Just the comment is just same, I mean, just the human instinct is just the hardest thing we have to do is determine the difference between our wants and our needs. Happens all the time at home. Well, that's a want, honey. That's not a need. But, I mean, that's the bottom line. You just have to be able to, like Matt said, you have to be able to determine what is actually essential and what is it would be cool to have.
Do you need anything from us right now, then? Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 18, audit of the bills. Any questions or comments on auditing of the bills?
I'll make a motion to approve checks number 12432 to checks 12767.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Number 19, set next meeting date. First Tuesday in June is June 2nd. No, sorry, June 7th, 5 o'clock. Good. We're not taking a vote on that, right? All right. Any questions or comments, Tim?
Just a heads up or whatever. Last week, we completed our annual financial audit, so we'll be looking for the auditors to present the audit report to the Finance Committee either at the July or August finance meeting, depending on when they get their reports done. The past couple of years due to COVID, that did not occur, so we'll be looking to, we used to have them formally present that and adopt it, but so we'll be looking for that in either the July or August.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn then. I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Thank you, everybody.